Welcome, I'm Bill Wake. This is my summary of the work we've done on Twitch this week. We're working on building a set of tools for dulcimer players, and one of them is a metronome. So this last week, we made our denominator, which is the time signature, set the note type. We'll see that. We've banged our heads on sounds interacting with threads for a good session and maybe a half. We fixed those problems. We got sounds playing and start and stop working correctly. And we added a facility to show which step of the pattern we're on. And finally, we finished that and started the chord chart. Didn't make a whole lot of progress there. Let's see a demo and take a code walkthrough. The first thing you see on the metronome is the time signature, and the numerator controls the number of boxes below, and the denominator controls this notation here. And that's really more informational for the reader or the musician, telling them which beat really counts. So in this case, it's a quarter note, but it could be an eighth note or it could be a half note. 4/4 is the most common time, known as common time, and almost always it's quarter note gets the beat for the kind of music we're doing. But maybe sometimes you get some things in 3/8 or 6/8 that might fit better as an eighth note pulse. This controls the sounds, and if you click one, it acts like a radio button kind of thing, but if you click the green one, it clears it, so you can have a sound or no sound at any given point on the thing. And then the last bit is the beats per minute. You're setting that either precisely with the buttons or grabbing the slider and getting close. And finally, you can hit start. So notice this is live to that, so that's fine. I guess we can do the same thing there, just proving everything's live relative to each other. That doesn't affect the sound, so that's okay. And then we hit stop, and the music stops. That's pretty much how a metronome works. The only feature I would like that I don't have, sometimes you'd like to have it randomly not make any sounds. And this is to kind of build up your skill to keep the beat steady whether or not you've got a metronome. But that's sort of a version 2 thing. We'll get back to that some other time. All right, let's see some code. So here's the overall view, and you can see it's got 4 sections corresponding to those here: the time signature view, the sound grid view, the beats per minute view, and the player. The time signature, we covered that before. There's nothing really interesting going on there. The sound grid view has a little bit of stuff going on we'll look at. BPM view is pretty boring, nothing to see there. And finally, the player view we'll look at as well. The sound grid view has the pattern of drum sounds or metronome sounds, I guess. And it really is just go through the possible sounds, tick, tock, and kick, and make a row for each one. And the color of that square is determined by whether or not which color is set. So in this case, the kick is first, so that one's in the green, and the other two are the light pink there. There's a tap gesture, and if you tap one of these buttons, you get that radio button behavior, and that's really managed by this. If it equals the sound, so if you're tapping on a green one, it goes silent, and if you're not tapping on the one that's already green, you're selecting a different one, and that one lights up. Okay. The only other thing in here that's interesting is this one, and this comes to the question of what do we show when we're actually operating. And what we do is we make the opacity change. So in each column, it's either going to be 0.75 or 1. And when is it 0.75? Well, that's when the beat index, the sound we're showing, the square we're showing now, if that matches the current beat, which is the dynamic thing that counts around, then we change that opacity to make it seem highlighted. All right, and the player view, or the player the player view. The big thing is it's got that play pause button, and we'll skip over this behavior for a moment, but there's the key thing for making sound is there's a sound trigger. So that's a Boolean variable up here, and it starts off false, and we monitor changes of that. Now, at one point we tried to monitor when it went true, but that creates issues because it will also notify when it goes false. And so we were having to do some work to straighten that out. Instead, we're treating it more like an edge trigger. If it goes up, that triggers something. If it goes down, that triggers something. All right, and then when should we, when should we play? Well, if the is playing flag is on, that's controlled by when you press the button, and the beat's not nil. So if the current beat position is nil, then there's no sound to be made. And so given those two conditions, we calculate the beat. So we take the last beat, add 1, and take modulo. So that makes it wrap around when, if it's doing beat 1, 2, 3, 4, it's really 0, 1, 2, 3 at our level, and the percent numerator makes it wrap around again. We pick the sound based on whatever the pattern for the beat is. So one of those 3 cells, or else silent, and if it's not silent, we play the sound. And we went around a bit on how to do this and whether to do it in the main thread, or a user thread, or a separate thread. What it came down to is it's okay to do a play in the main thread. I assume it spins off some separate thread to do the work. But as far as what you do, you just hit play and it plays, and then you can go on to the next event from your user interface. So we can't just play and block, because if you block this main thread that this is happening on, then you can't hit the stop button. So we wanted to be able to start and stop. But anyway, this shows you the rotation. Now the toggle aspect, here's that is playing toggle. If it's playing, we set the beat to -1, and what that does, because we want to make sure the beat number that we play matches the beat number that we're showing, and the playing is kind of the triggering event, we have to make sure we leave beat in the right column. And so by starting on -1, we guarantee that the first time it hits -1 plus 1 is 0, and starts on the beginning of the pattern. Every time you hit start stop, it forces that back to that. If we didn't, like if we were to have the beat and then update it at the bottom, that would leave the view, the grid view, the highlighting would be 1 off. And so we have to do this before we select the beat. Okay. And then if we're turning it off, we just set beat to nil, and that tells this to stop making noise. All right. And then play sound. Let's go up there. All right. This is kind of the tricky bit. And we went around a few bits on this, getting this quite right. But the big thing is sound triggered toggles. This is the pulse. And so every time it runs, it toggles that flag, and that will trigger the playing. All right. Now the two parts is it has to keep playing. So we can't just write a loop that says, play until you read the stop button, because this is on the main thread and it controls it. So we basically set this up as a new event going in the main event queue, and it triggers that sound. The next time the main thread runs, it can see this sound trigger changed, and it can do the right thing. All right, but you have to deal with the repeats. We want it to keep going. And so that's where this next line is. You might think that line 33 makes this a recursive function because it seems to call itself, but it doesn't. It's not recursive in the usual way. We're calling it inside a closure, and we run that closure. We schedule it for the future. So the current time now, and how long should you do this in terms of the beats per minute. So 60 beats per minute is one second per beat. 120 beats per minute is a half a second per beat. So we convert that beats per minute into the interval time, add it into the current time, and that says, hey, after this event, after this time passes, run the closure, and that will call play sound again, which will trigger another toggle. But there's only one kind of future event left out there at any given point. We tried doing some things with sleep, but it turns out that if you sleep on the main thread like that, it actually lets other things come in, and so that created problems. And I'm very sure this is a much better approach. It's using the cue to do the waiting and not having us do something. So that seems right. All right, so that's really the bulk of what there is to this metronome. Let me pop over to the chord chart. There's just nothing there yet to show, really. We started working out how can you draw this thing. So this represents a 3-string dulcimer, and the lines up and down are frets. Now most dulcimers don't have a fret in every position here, so we have to work out that. We want to have stuff overlaying it, so we have to work out that. We want some frets to show up in different widths or not show up as dashed lines. There's just a ton to do. Coming up, the focus for this week is this chord chart tool. I've got just a sketch of what I expect it to kind of be like. So you can see the grid of that fret layout up top. Now it's got some that are separated by 2 steps, and some that are dotted, and some that have thicker lines, and so on. We want to write out the chords that you can play. So 002 is a common D chord, and so on. I want to be able to say what chord do you want, and I'm using what musicians call the circle of fifths, and then the other circle shows the chords in a major key. They go between major and minor, and also diminish. So 1's a major, 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. We haven't figured out how to draw the circles with the spaced out letters and numbers around them, so there are more experiments coming. But I think we'll make a dent and see if we can turn this into something useful. All right, you can join us Monday through Thursday, 2 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or 7 to 9:30 p.m. UTC. And xp123.com/Twitch will get you to the live sessions. And xp123.com/YouTube gets you to the old sessions, time delayed a couple weeks and lightly edited. Hope you can join us. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.